My sister stood at the entrance of my wedding venue in a full, white bridal gown. She wasn't the bride. I was. But according to the deal she'd struck with my parents and my husband, she was supposed to walk down the aisle before me, take pictures, and have her own moment, because my parents thought it was unfair that the younger sister was getting married first. She was beaming, waiting for the doors to swing open so she could hijack my life one last time. She didn't notice the massive security guard standing in her way. She didn't know that my husband, the man she'd been trying to flirt with for months, had spent the last half year tricking my parents into paying for a $50,000 wedding they weren't even allowed to attend. If you want to see how a doormat daughter and a petty genius husband executed the most expensive sting operation in family history, stay tuned. This isn't just a story about a bad wedding. It's about 25 years of back pay for emotional damages. My parents spent my childhood making me eat the cake flavors my sister liked. On my wedding day, I made them eat the most expensive bill of their lives, and then I locked the doors. To understand why I let my husband light my family's reputation on fire, you have to understand my childhood. I was the unplanned mistake. My sister Sarah was the miracle child born after years of trying. When I showed up just a year later, I wasn't a blessing. I was a budget breaker. My parents didn't hide it. If Sarah wanted a specific toy, she got it. If I wanted a book, I had to earn it by doing her chores. My birthday cakes were always her favorite flavor, strawberry, even though I'm mildly allergic and hate the taste. When I'd cry, my mom would just shrug and say, "Oh, I forgot. But look how much Sarah is enjoying it. Don't be selfish." Sarah grew up like a small suburban dictator. She used me as a punching bag, both physically and emotionally. If she broke a vase, she'd tell my parents I did it. Even if I was in a different room, they'd believe her. I learned early on that the truth didn't matter in our house. Only Sarah's feelings mattered. By the time we were teens, she had no friends because she was a nightmare to be around. But instead of fixing her personality, my parents just decided I wasn't allowed to have friends either. "Why are you trying to leave us?" they'd ask. "Why can't you be like Sarah and enjoy family time?" I was 13 when I realized that the only people who could check my parents were my extended family. Most of my cousins lived in the same town, and they actually liked me. At a family BBQ, one of my older cousins asked why I never came to the movies with them. With the bluntness of a child who has nothing left to lose, I told them, "I'm not allowed to have friends because Sarah doesn't have any, and it makes her feel bad." The silence at that BBQ was deafening. My aunts and uncles turned on my parents like a pack of wolves. They were tore apart right there over the potato salad. My parents were humiliated. Of course, the moment we got home, I was grounded for a month for lying, but the damage was done. They were forced to give me some leeway, because the rest of the family was now watching them. Sarah's response? She demanded to change schools because she couldn't stand the humiliation of everyone knowing she was a loner. My parents spent money. They didn't have to send her to a private school further away. She made new friends there, and she brought them home specifically to bully me. My parents called it light teasing. I called it the reason I would eventually go no contact. Then came the boys. I was the skinny sister, mostly because my parents used no snacks as my primary punishment, while they fed Sarah treats to show love. Sarah was overweight, bitter, and had the flirting skills of a wet brick. When I brought my first boyfriend home, I tried to keep him away from her. But one afternoon, he found me in the garden, looking genuinely disturbed. "Your sister just came into the kitchen in a nightgown," he whispered. She started telling me how bad you are in bed and how she could show me a real woman. I felt sick, but I wasn't surprised. What happened next was the blueprint for my entire life. Sarah ran to my parents crying, claiming my boyfriend had hit on her. My parents didn't hesitate. They called him a predator, forbid me from seeing him, and told me I had bad judgment. This happened with 2 more boyfriends. Every time a guy showed interest in me, Sarah tried to steal him. When she failed, she framed him. My parents used these incidents to justify locking me down even harder. You clearly can't pick good men, OP. Thank God Sarah is here to protect you. Graduation was the breaking point. Sarah graduated with terrible grades, but my parents threw a parade. They announced they were paying for her entire university degree. A month later, my mom sat me down for the talk. Since we're paying for Sarah's college, we have no money for yours, she said, not even looking me in the eye. You should start working. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, when Sarah is done, we can see about you. Also, if you live here, you're paying rent. They expected a tantrum. They wanted me to scream so they could call me ungrateful. I just blinked and said, "Okay, I understand." They didn't know I'd been studying in secret for years. Since I wasn't allowed to have a social life, I had nothing but books. I applied for every scholarship under the sun. When I got a full ride to a decent university, I didn't tell them privately. Shocked, I posted it on Facebook and tagged every single one of our relatives. I thanked my parents for inspiring my independence. They were trapped. They had to act proud in the comments, even as Sarah was screaming in the background. I moved out 2 weeks later and didn't look back for 4 years. I met Mark in my junior year. If I am a doormat, Mark is a titanium floor. I'm the person who cries when I'm angry. Mark is the person who gets very, very quiet and starts calculating. He loves resolving drama. He grew up in a family where you clapped back or you got stepped on. When we got engaged, I was terrified to introduce him. They'll try to ruin it, Mark. Sarah will flirt with you, and my parents will believe whatever lie she tells. Mark's eyes lit up. He wasn't scared. He was excited. "Babe," he said, I've been reading pro-revenge stories since I was 12. Let them try. I want to meet them. Alone." He went to their house equipped with a high-end digital recorder in his pocket. He told me he was going to probe them. He came back 2 hours later looking like he'd won the lottery. "You won't believe the audacity," he laughed. "They didn't just try to sabotage the wedding. They tried to buy it." Mark played me the recording. My parents and Sarah had sat him down like a board of directors. "We'll pay for the entire wedding," my dad's voice crackled on the tape. "The venue, the food, the dress, everything. But there's a condition. It's not right for a younger sister to marry first. So Sarah will walk down the aisle first, in her own wedding dress. She'll have her own photos, her own cake moment. And the guests will treat it like her ceremony too. Then you can marry OP." I felt the familiar sting of tears. Even my wedding was just a stage for Sarah's delusions. But Mark was grinning. "I almost lost it," Mark told me. My brain literally short-circuited. I wanted to scream, "Are you insane?" But then I thought, if they want to play games, let's play for the highest stakes possible. Mark told them he needed to think about it and ran out. That night, we sat in our apartment and hatched the plan. We weren't going to just say no. We were going to make them pay for the most extravagant wedding of my dreams, and then we were going to shut the door in their faces. The first step was building the crazy OP narrative. Mark went back to them and said, "Look, I'm down for the Sarah bride idea, but OP is, well, you know how she is. She's neurotic and controlling. She checks my phone every night. If she sees a single text about this, she'll kill the wedding. My parents nodded sagely. Yes, she's always had such bad judgment and a temper, my mom said. Perfect. We established a rule: zero written communication. Any talk about the sister wedding had to happen in person at their house. This meant they had no proof, no emails, no texts that Mark had ever agreed to their plan. Then, the milking began. We'd go to food tastings. I'd pick the cheap chicken option. Mark would secretly take Sarah aside and sigh. It's a shame OP is so cheap. I really wanted the filet mignon and the open bar for your big walk, Sarah. Sarah would throw a tantrum, and within an hour my parents would call and insist on paying for the $150 a head platinum menu. We did this with the flowers, the photographer, and the premium liquor. We were building a $60,000 wedding on my parents' dime, all under the guise of making it special for Sarah. The biggest hurdle was the dress. My mom tried to force me into a hideous ruffled gown that looked like a 1980s prom disaster. I refused in text, leaving the only written evidence that I was being difficult. Mark told them, "Don't worry, I'll handle the dress." On the morning of the wedding, Mark took some leftover fabric scraps from my actual dress alterations to my parents' house. He showed them the shredded fabric. "I did it," he whispered. "She's inside crying her eyes out. She'll have to wear the dress you bought now. I'll see you at the venue." Meanwhile, we had hired professional security. We gave them a photo of Sarah and a very specific instruction. "This woman will arrive in a wedding dress. Do not let her past the gate. Tell her she has the wrong venue." We also tipped the guard $200 extra to stay in character. The venue was packed. My parents were seated in the front row, smirking. They were waiting for the bride music to play for Sarah. They had a text that she was 5 minutes away. My dad stood at the back of the aisle, waiting to walk. Someone. The doors opened. It was me, in my beautiful, unshredded designer gown. The look on my dad's face was worth every year of trauma. He looked aghast. He actually looked behind me, searching for Sarah. Then his phone rang. It was her, screaming from the gate because security wouldn't let her in. My dad didn't even hesitate. He mumbled, "Something came up," and walked out on my wedding. He abandoned me at the altar to go help the bride he actually cared about. I started to cry. But this time I used it. I whispered loudly enough for the front 3 rows to hear. He told me it wasn't supposed to be me here. My husband's friend, who was in on the plan, shouted, "What do you mean it's not supposed to be her? Who else would it be?" The room exploded into whispers. My husband's dad stepped up, took my arm with a proud smile, and walked me down the aisle. We got married while my parents were in the parking lot, screaming at a security guard. While we were having our first dance, the real show was in the parking lot. Sarah was on the ground, kicking her legs and screaming in her white dress. My parents were threatening to call the police on the security guard. Mark stepped out to check the noise. My parents lunged at him. "You lied. You said she could walk. You said the dress was ruined." Mark put on his best confused face. "What are you talking about? Why would I ever agree to let your daughter hijack my wife's wedding in a costume? That's insane. Do you have proof? A text? A recording?" They had nothing. They looked like 3 delusional lunatics. Our guests, who had wandered out to see the commotion, were horrified. They saw a woman in a wedding dress screaming at a security guard, and my parents claiming a secret deal that sounded like a fever dream. I think the stress of the wedding has made you lose your minds, Mark said coldly. Please leave before I have you arrested for harassment. My dad had to literally drag Sarah off the pavement. They were humiliated in front of everyone they knew. We went on our honeymoon the next day. Sarah sent me an unhinged 10-paragraph text calling Mark a snake and claiming he was cheating on me with her. Mark took my phone, smiled, and took a screenshot. He then went into the massive family group chat, the one with all the aunts, uncles, and cousins who had saved me when I was 13. I am so sorry to bother everyone, Mark wrote, but OP's parents and Sarah are having some sort of mental breakdown. They tried to force Sarah into a wedding dress at our ceremony, and now they are sending us these threatening messages. We just want to enjoy our honeymoon in peace. Please help them. He attached the screenshots of Sarah's crazy texts and my parents' aggressive calls. The family group chat went nuclear. My aunts and uncles, who already knew my parents were off, absolutely blasted them. They were blocked by everyone. My parents lost their social standing. Sarah is still living in her childhood bedroom, and they are out $60,000 for a wedding they didn't even see. My husband wants to print out the screenshot of Sarah calling him a two-faced snake and frame it in our hallway. I think I might let him. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like a doormat. I feel like the architect of my own happiness. What would you have done? Was the fake out too much? Or was it the perfect back pay for a lifetime of abuse? Drop a comment below and tell me your best golden child revenge stories.